So in this video, I'm building a stained glass window for my bunkhouse. So because I pretty much went over a lot of these steps in my other videos, I just omitted the beginning. And the process is the same as the doors for rails and stiles. Send them through the planer, cut them to length, and clamp them and screw them together. So I'll finish up that and show you what I do next. The one thing I am doing differently on the windows than the doors is, rather than angle screwing from the sides, I'm just pilot drilling straight in. Just because the rails and stiles are a lot thinner, you can get a 3.5 inch screw in there and it's much easier. So I just take my drill, pilot a hole right about in the center. Take my 3.5 inch screw. And drive it in just like that. Now that I've got it all screwed together, I can go and remove the clamps. And hopefully, if I did it right, it should hold together. So now I've got an essentially perfectly square window frame, and I can go ahead and start laying out where I want the muntins in this. Basically what I'm going to be doing is replicating this window here. So this will be approximately a 3/4 scale to what this window is. And this window, I'll show you in the house. So I built this window approximately 3.5 years ago, I'd say. And the window that was in here before was just this actually is like a replica of the original window that would have been in this house. This is my grandparents' house. And if you watched my bunkhouse video, I took a lot of inspiration from this house. It's a beautiful early 20th century home, and it has lots of good characteristics that I like. So when I built my bunkhouse, I took a lot of inspiration from this place. As you can see, the stairs, how they wind around 3 times and just stuff like that. So the reason I didn't put the window in the first time was because I was a bit overwhelmed with all the windows I had to do, and a stained glass window like this takes a bit of extra time, and I already had one to build, so I have some time now, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Another detail that I forgot to mention is on the bottom of the window, I angled it 5 degrees, and that's for the sill, so water runs off. So now I have to make some determinations as to where the muntins are gonna go. So I have to divide this into 3 equal sections, and then I'm not sure how I'm gonna split these up. Maybe one, and then 2 parts. I'll go do some math and be right back. Okay, so I've determined where the muntins are gonna lay out. These marks delineate where the little squares are gonna be. This is facing the outside of the window, so I want the little squares to be ascending up with the staircase, one here and one here. So now I'm going to be making the frame of this window. So I started off with cutting the sill, and this took a little bit of math. I just went the width of the window, and that will sit inside of the frame. So I'll notch that out. And I left 4.5 inches, or actually about 4 7/8, just so the casing comes down and sits on the sill and is flush with the end. And to start with the rest of the frame, I'm going to take a 2x6 and just cut it to the width of the window. And then for the sides, I just took a measurement of what this will be when it's on the proper angle. And I went and made a mark at 18 3/8, and I'm going to cut that. And then for the total width of this, it's going to be 4 1/4 approximately that I'll have to rip these down to. Now I have everything laid out in the orientation I need it. I just made 5-degree marks on the bottom of the sill, and I'm going to leave these square so the window will sit nicely in the frame square and I won't have to shim the bottom. So I'm just going to go and screw all these joints, and then that window will slip right into here. And then 1 1/4 back, I'll just put a piece of molding and then a square one by material that will close off the top. Now I've got all the muntins in the window in place, so this is going to be the final layout of what the window looks like. Now I just have to start putting in the rabbeted edge. I should also mention that this time I didn't actually take the time to notch these out and connect them to one another. Since this window is so small and a lot of these just terminate into another muntin and don't actually fully intersect, that wasn't really a viable option for most of this window. And because it's so small, I could hardly get a brad nail in there to hold it, so the majority of these are just held together by glue. And I know a lot of you might think that's insufficient, but the other window I made is done the same way and it's holding up just fine. So I think that should work. And just something I wanted to mention about that is allowable tolerances. If I'm doing work for myself, the allowable tolerances are quite a bit greater than what I would do for somebody else. The two factors that usually make up allowable tolerances are the time in which a job needs to be done and the money that is allocated for the job. So this I need to do very quickly. I want it done for this weekend, and my budget is basically $0. I'm using all material that I have laying around, so I figure I can, I guess you could say, cut a bit of corners, but I'm sure in the end it'll turn out just fine. Okay, so I'm just working on getting the pieces of molding in the window, and for this, since this is so small I can't get my brad nailer in there, I just take the piece, put a little bit of glue on the back, put it in roughly where it's got to go, and then just take the gauge and figure out exactly where it'll go, and go like that the whole way through. So I'm just working on getting the glass cut and numbered where it's got to go. And just in case you didn't see my door video where I cut the glass, I'll just quickly show you how I do that. So I got my marks made, and I just used my framing square and a pistol grip glass cutter. This is mainly used for doing stained glass. And then there's the score line. And on the smaller pieces you can just snap them, but on these longer ones, I just like to do that because this glass, I don't know, this is probably 100-year-old glass. These came out of really old windows, so I'm just not sure of how strong it is. And then this is the first piece I have marked, so I'll score that. And then that will fit in one of those window panes. Now that I have all the glass cut, I'm going to flip these over because I still want the outside of the glass to have a smooth finish, so it just reflects light a little bit. So I'll flip these over and then I'll sand them to create a frosted glass look. Okay, so I've tried this once before and I think it worked okay. So I'm just gonna give this another try here, and I think I'm using 120 grit sandpaper. I might have to get some finer stuff, but I'm just gonna give this a try and see how it works. Have to move to a coarser paper to start out. So I'm moving to an 80 grit. That's the coarsest I have right now. Like that's gonna work, so this will take a little bit of time to get it all frosty, but I'll go ahead and do that and then show you what it looks like. Okay, so after about 3 or 4 minutes of sanding, I think I got what I wanted. I don't want it to be like total obscurity, but just enough so it's like frosted glass. So you can still see through the outside a little bit, but not too much. So just getting a little bit of the way through here. I think this is gonna look okay. It's probably the right amount of frost. So I'll keep going and finish up the rest. Okay, so I just got the last piece finished here. And the only thing about this frosted glass that I don't really like is that there's all the random orbit sander marks, but that's not a huge deal. Other people might think that's a big deal, but when I'm working at my own behest, the allowable tolerances are totally up to me. So now that I have all the pieces done, I took them out and laid them down inside. This is the inside of the glass, the actual frosted side. I'm gonna try applying the paint to the frosted side because I think that with the abrasions of the sanding here, it might help ameliorate that separation and cracking that happened on my other window. Just because the building isn't heated in the winter, I think the temperature might have something to do with that. I'll just get this opened here. Now this glass stain paint from DecoArt, I don't think they make this anymore. I can't find it at Michael's and I can't find it online. This stuff I just had a redundancy from when I did my last window, so I'm lucky to have these. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I know they make spray paint for glass, but it's not as vibrant, and like they're really kind of neon colors and dull, and I don't think they make a pink. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll have plenty for this project. So I'll just show you how I do this. I clean these pieces off, and then I just slowly start to apply. I don't want to go right to the edge because it'll overflow. But it close enough to the edge that it'll cover. And I don't want to get bubbles in it. I want to try and do this all in one motion so I'm not sucking air back into the container and creating bubbles. Now I notice when I'm putting this on, it's taking the frosting out of here. So I might have to come up with a different plan. I might have to actually sand the paint, I'm not sure. Looks like it's taking the frosting right out of the glass. I didn't even think of that. And I didn't want to sand the outside of the glass because the reflective part of the shiny glass on the outside, that'll help obscure what's inside. Okay, now I want to set this on a level surface so I don't have all the paint slumping and creating light and dark areas. Now for the window frame, I'm just working on putting in the molding that'll keep the window in place. So these are just 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch strips, and then I cut an 1.25 inch block as a spacer. That's the same width and thickness of the window. And then I just flush it up and nail it. Okay, so now what I'm doing with the window is closing it in with these pieces here. So it sits in the frame on that other piece of trim that I put on the back, 1.25 inch back. And then I cut these at 1.25 inch, so they cover the 3/4 inch frame and stick over and capture the window and hold it in place. So, and then when I put my casing on, it'll cover about to there and go and sit down on the sill. And putting these pieces on brings the total thickness of the window frame to 4.25, which is what I need. So now I've got my piece measured, 5-degree angle cut on the bottom. So you can see how it just captures the window. So I'm gonna pilot drill into it here. Line it up. Fasten it, and I fasten it with screws, so when I go to install the window I can just pop those pieces off and pop the window out and then nail it in behind where the window's gonna sit, so you don't see any nails exposed in the face of the trim. Now I decided I'm gonna stain the inside of this window before I put the glass in. It'll just make it a lot easier and I won't have to be as careful. So I got the rest of the pieces painted here, and I guess this table's not level because the paint slumped one way, but since I'm just gonna sand these, I don't think that's gonna be a problem. Someone was asking me what kind of stain I used on the staircase and all the windows and stuff. It's this min wax and it's called red mahogany. So for the muntins, I'm just going to brush it on and hopefully the glue doesn't show through too bad, which it doesn't look like it's going to, which is good. I might apply it with paper towel on the flatter surfaces, but I'll just get the muntins going here and make sure those go okay. So that's basically the process I use to stain the muntins. Just a small little brush. And another thing that I really like about this stain is that it's so dark. The shadow lines of where the molding doesn't fully contact the muntin, it makes it pretty much indiscernible, like even from up close. Like you can't really see a whole lot is wrong with it. So from far away, I think it looks pretty good. Now for the flat areas, I'm just gonna give it a try with paper towel. I think that'll work a little nicer than trying to brush it on. It'll put it on a little thinner and more evenly so the grain isn't too obscured. And that's what I want, is just to make the grain kind of pop like that. Might have to brush it into the corners just a little bit, but that's pretty much the goal right there. And then I think I'll go ahead and polyurethane it too while the glass is out. Now that I've got the staining all complete, I will let this dry and do some polyurethane. Now that the paint on the glass has dried overnight, I'm just gonna go and give it a little scuff with 180 grit sandpaper. And this will create a bit of a frosted look. That's pretty much the look I'm going for right there. And also, now that the stain is dry on the inside of the window, I'm just applying the polyurethane. So that just really gives it a much richer color and makes it shiny. I'll probably put a couple coats of polyurethane on just to make it nice and shiny. But it really brings out the red and brown stain. Right now I'm working on putting the glazing putty in, and I'll just do a quick demonstration of this just in case you didn't see my door video. I think I went into a little more detail on this process, but basically you just pack it right off of the ball right into the joint, and then take your glazing bar. I'm using a stiletto titanium bar. I don't think it's exactly meant for doing this, but I don't think they really make a tool specifically for doing this either. And then pack it in with the bar, and then just run it on a 45-degree angle. Smooth it off. This is working much better than it did for me when I was doing the doors, because it's pretty much summertime now and it's a lot warmer out, so it makes a nice clean edge from the transition from the muntin to the glass. So now the glazing putty is complete. This stuff was fairly soft since I added linseed oil from when I was doing the doors because it was so cold, and it kind of made it so it's a bit sloppy. You can't really get the corners very nice because it's so runny. So what I'm gonna do is just hold off on painting this for a couple weeks, a month, I don't know, and just go back when this starts to set up a little bit. Probably in a couple weeks it'll start firming up, and just touch everything up then, and then I can paint it. So I think this is pretty much it for the window. That's pretty much how the casing is gonna go. I just cut the top piece a little long, so when I put the sides on, I can cut it to length, wherever that'll be. So that was my video on how to build a stained glass window. I'm gonna have the installation video of this coming out right after. I'm gonna install it this weekend. And yeah, if you like that, be sure to subscribe and check out some of my other videos on the doors from the Potter House series. Just because the Potter House series has come to an end doesn't mean I'm gonna stop creating content. So I'll be doing cool projects like this and all sorts of other neat things. So